All right, good morning. Hi, everyone. Today we are joined by Dr. Marietta Richard. She is a local clinical psychologist in our Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Dr. Richard graduated from the Plan 2 Honors Program at the University of Texas in Austin. She obtained her master's in psychology from Trinity University, and her PhD in clinical psychology is from UT Southwestern. She's worked for the Dallas Independent School District, the Hearst Euless Bedford School District, and the Keller School District, all on testing, evaluations, ARD meetings, and IEP. So she's pretty well versed in all of that. She was an assistant clinical director for counseling and psychological services at the University of Texas in Arlington, where she supervised all psychological testing and helped students develop an effective coping strategies. Dr. Richard is now the owner of a Premier Psychology Consultants, which is a private practice here in Southlake, Texas. Dr. Richard, just to let you all know, she's kind of rearranged her entire schedule to speak to our group to TAPS today. And she has had some questions that you all have asked prior to, so she will address those first. And if we do have some time, if you want to put any additional questions into chat, we'll try to see if she has time enough to be able to answer those. So she'll have to step away a little bit before 1, about 12:55, because she has another client. So we're trying to work around her schedule, and so we appreciate her doing what she's doing today. So I will go ahead and Dr. Richard will start off with the questions that we had here in advance.
Did you want me to just answer the questions, or are you going to ask me the questions? I can do it. I can do it. Okay.
Either way, I've got your list, so I can ask them. So the first question that we had was what long-term effects from COVID-19 era of remote and hybrid teachings do you see for students and teachers?
Okay. I think we probably are going to see some long-term effects from the epidemic, probably impacting in both negative and positive ways for our students, teachers, administrators, everybody. We humans, we don't like uncertainty. And this last year has had a lot of uncertainty. We are all imperfect people living in an imperfect world, and we like to kind of know what we can expect. And with the Zoom classes and technology working and not working, people have not known what to expect, and that can be very, very challenging. When we think about what's happened over the past year, COVID itself has really triggered a lot of people, students, parents, staff, administrators, into thinking about their own mental health, their psychological health, their physical health. And so we've had to kind of deal with a lot of uncertainty. Are we going to be okay? Are our friends and family going to be okay? Are we going to be able to survive this? Or are we going to constantly have to be kind of hyper vigilant about what's happening in the world around us? So many people have also lost people to COVID. We know that there are about 40,000 students, 40,000 children just in the United States that have lost one parent to COVID over the last year. And they think by the time we're finally through this, there may be over 100,000 children in the United States that will have lost a parent or guardian to COVID. So one of the things that we're going to have to help people deal with is loss and grief and what might have been. I know one family that has lost 5 different family members, all different ages, all different relationships. That's a lot of grieving. That's a lot of loss for students. A lot of people have lost economically. They've lost a chance to be in connection with their friends, with their peers, with their family. So we're going to be dealing with loss and grief and what might have been for a long time. We are seeing more anxiety and depression across the board. We are seeing changes in children in their behavior. Sometimes you'll see a quiet student is now acting out. Sometimes you'll see someone who was really pretty extroverted. Now they're more withdrawn. You may see an increase of irritability. You may see increases in angry outbursts. You may see increases in increased withdrawn. They're just not interacting. They're not really fully present with you, either online or in person. Some kids just appear to be zoning out, and they probably are. They're dealing with their own internal dialogue rather than what's happening in the here and now. What you really want to be aware of, though, and the thing that I think most of us as health professionals are most concerned about is increased signs of hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness. We are seeing that across the board, and those can be indicators of self-harming or suicidal ideation. If you see that, consult a professional, refer them on to see a health professional. Try not to minimize it. If you have a conversation with someone and you're hearing that they just don't feel like going on, that's a considerable indicator that there may be something more significant wrong. So I hope that's not a long-term effect of COVID, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see kind of longer-term feelings of hopelessness and helplessness across all age groups. We are seeing an increase in self-harming. For some students, it can be scratching, cutting, hitting themselves. They're going to probably do it in ways that it's not immediately obvious, but you may see some signs. Some students are food restricting, or they're developing eating disorders, binging and purging. If you see, again, any of those kinds of signs, trust yourself. You're good administrators and professionals. Have a conversation with that student or with your staff and recommend that they see somebody who can help them through this time. You said, what are the long-term effects? I'd also like to say that I think that there's some positive effects that could come out of this. We have, with COVID-19, we have the opportunity to look at the world in a different way. We have an opportunity to look at ourselves in a different way. And if we can learn how to be open to looking at things more like a scientist, we can develop hypotheses about how we might be able to handle ourselves differently, how we might be able to solve problems differently. We can develop increased flexibility and learn how to rethink our approaches to problems. Part of that is being humble, not deciding ahead of time that we know how something's going to turn out to be, but being flexible, being curious, being open, being creative to solving the problems that we've seen over the last year and the problems going forward. I think we have an opportunity to really affirm and validate the resilience that people have developed, and that those are the positive things that can come out of what we've been in this last year.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question. Is that okay, Dr. Richard?
Sure.
Okay. So the next question that we had asked was, what advice do you have for teachers who feel burnt out, at least momentarily, after all the adjustments the last year has necessitated?
Okay. Well, first of all, remind yourself that it's normal to feel burned out. This has been a very challenging year for everybody. It's been challenging emotionally, psychologically, and physically. And so give yourself some grace, some appreciation that you're doing the best you can with what you have. And that's all any of us can do, right? We do want to recognize that human beings, we're designed to kind of react to acute or brief danger, right? There's a lion on the plane. We need to know what to do. Do we need to get back into the caves? Do we need to climb a tree? Where's that lion? We need to know where it is. We, as humans, we're not used to the lion being there all the time, right? We respond to the acute danger and then we have a chance to kind of regroup. We really haven't had that this last year. We've really had wave after wave after wave of difficult things happening in our world, in our personal lives, in our professional lives. And that's a lot. That's a lot for any of us to handle. I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I like to use a lot of analogies and metaphors. So I'm going to use one here. We've experienced wave after wave this year of distress. And every time there's a new wave, things get disrupted again. So we don't have to learn how to get out of the water, and we can't control the waves. We all know how to swim, and if we can't swim, we can at least float. So remember, if you're really feeling overwhelmed and being pulled down, if you open your mouth just a little bit and breathe, don't breathe in underwater. I'm not saying that, but if you just let the air out, the bubbles always rise to the surface, and you can follow them to the surface. Once you get to the surface, you've got to breathe. You've got to make sure you're getting enough air, and you're going to ride the waves. So you may body surf or you may just float, but you're going to stay on the surface and you're going to make sure that you're getting your oxygen and that you're getting what you need. Okay. We can talk about, I think there's another question that addresses that more specifically. Again, we need to tell ourselves, you're doing the best you can with what you have, right? You've got this, you can do this, and you're going to be okay no matter what. Did you want me to address the specific ways to like do deep breathing and things like that, or should we wait till a little bit later on?
I think don't you have a question farther on that does that, or would you rather? Okay, so let's just wait and we'll make sure you guys get that techniques. So
I'll be happy to teach you the techniques.
We need those. So the next, are you done with that one, Dr. Richard?
Yes.
So the next question we had prior to our meeting was, what is the best way for teachers to meet their students' needs, obviously while also meeting our own?
Okay. We talked about this, I think, shortly before the conference call started. One thing I always tell my clients is we need to make sure that we get our oxygen first, right? If we're not getting our oxygen first, we're not going to have the energy to be able to help anybody else. So think about it like that. Self-care practices, making sure that you're taking care of yourself first, that gives you the core that you need to be available to help your students, right? So one thing that we know makes a difference, and the psychological research bears this out, is that we need to work on being fully present with our students, with our staff, with our colleagues, with our families. When we're fully present, we are not thinking about something else. We're really focusing on the other person. We're listening to what they have to say. And when we listen actively, it really helps our students to feel like they're being heard. It helps them to know that they have a voice, that we may not be able to change the waves, but people know that they're trying to swim, that they're trying to float. So I really encourage everybody to work on that. If you haven't had any lessons in mindfulness or how to be fully present, take a look at some of the YouTube videos or TEDx talks on that. It can make a huge difference in how you feel about yourself and also how you feel about your interactions with other people. I think we're going to do the exercises a little bit later. We can help our students by encouraging them to write. They can journal what they're feeling. If they're artists or musicians, they can write songs, they can perform music, they can draw or paint to help them express what they're feeling. I encourage my clients to write letters. Those are not necessarily letters that they want to send out to the people that they're writing them to. They're letters that they can bring in and share with their therapist. But writing the letter can be a very helpful way for them to express what they're feeling and feel like their voice is heard. You can encourage your students to do all of these things. Another thing I think is really important is both for us to model for our students and staff, but also for our students, encourage them not to overstuff their time. Encourage them to recognize that this has been a difficult year and we need a little bit of space. We need a little bit of buffer so that we're not feeling like we're pushing all the way to the end of the envelope all the time. That's not really sustainable for most of us. We tend to, just as humans, to write down like 10 things I want to get done today. And then if we don't get all 10 of those things done today, we feel like we're a failure. We haven't accomplished our goals. I encourage you, write down all those 10 things if that's helpful for you, but then prioritize them and tell yourself, if I get the top 3 done, I'm going to feel good about that. That's plenty. And then take a look at the other 7. If they're still important, move them to tomorrow's to-do list. You can do that. And some things will rise to the top and they'll be part of your top 3. Some things will just drop off the bottom. And if they drop off, they probably are things that you can let go of anyway. So be kind to yourself, encourage yourself, use what we call the 80% rule. In certain parts of the world, they've found that when people, I think in Japan, they found that when people eat 80% of what they need to feel comfortable and satisfied, they actually live longer, healthier lives. When we eat 100%, or sometimes in America 110%, of our meal, we're going to be overstuffed and we're not going to really even be able to enjoy it. So savor your day, savor your activities, keep to that 80% rule, and you'll have more energy and more of a buffer zone to handle the unexpected. Those waves keep coming. We want to stay on the top and keep getting our oxygen, keep riding the waves.
Are you ready for the next question?
Well, I'm wondering if I should go ahead and talk about maybe with students, help them to decrease their social isolation. Reach out to them, especially if it's somebody you haven't heard from in a while or you feel like is withdrawn. Encourage them to connect with their peers. Encourage them to connect with your school counselor or maybe a teacher that they have a good relationship with. I think we are seeing students that are developing more social anxiety, and because they've been disconnected for so long, they're not really sure how to initiate those connections again. So you can sometimes be a positive force for them, helping them to reconnect and in positive, helpful kinds of ways. Consider hosting a Zoom with rooms for other students, share strategies with each other. How are they coping? How are they doing this? What's helping them to get through? And I'd also encourage good self-care. We are seeing difficulties kind of across the board with people getting enough sleep, with them getting good regular nutrition. People are sometimes restricting and not eating enough at all. Sometimes they're overeating, but they're eating a lot of comfort food or junk food. It's understandable, it's normal, but it's not usually helpful. Increasing their hydration. Most of us go around dehydrated most of the time, and that's going to make it harder for us to handle any kinds of things that come up, the longer term crises and then the short term acute ones. We have to be hydrated, and we have to encourage ourselves to do that. Encourage them to manage their time on screens, whether it's on telephones, tablets, computers. We do know that for most people, being on the screens a lot will actually increase their irritability and their anxiety. And if they're using screens late into the evening, it can decrease their production of melatonin and make it difficult to stay on a helpful sleep cycle. We all need as much sleep as we can get. That's when our body kind of heals and processes what we've done during the day. And if we're not getting enough and long enough sleep, it's going to show up in our performance the next day. So that's true for students and for adults. We can also activate the nonverbal parts of our brain with exercise, art, music, sports, dance. We can encourage our students to do that as well. Okay.
Okay. You ready for my next question?
I'm
Okay.
ready.
All right, so another question we had from the TAPS audience was, have depression and anxiety rates increased in children? Which age groups have you seen the largest increase in mental health changes?
Well, I think we'd have to go and take a look at some of the bigger studies, and I think we're kind of at the beginning of looking at the research on this. But from what I've read, depression and anxiety rates have increased across the age ranges. Maybe not in very young children who don't really know what's happening. They're very home-based anyway, but anyone kindergarten or even preschool age and above, I think we've definitely seen increases in behavioral changes, in mood changes, increased anxiety, increased uncertainty about the future. Like we said earlier, we humans, we don't like uncertainty, and kids don't like it either. They like having a predictable structure, and they're not really sure what to do with all the changes that we've had this year. Older students do appear to be experiencing more distress than younger students. Part of that may be due to the fact that they're cognitively functioning at a different level, and they may recognize that this may have an impact on their future. Where younger students, they may be distressed about what's happening in the here and now and not sure how to handle that. They don't connect it up with, this may impact my whole life, and am I ever going to be able to pursue the dreams that I once had? We do know that the social isolation is really affecting a lot of students, especially as they get into like middle school and high school age. Those peer relationships are increasingly important. And for many of them, peer relationships over a screen just is not the same as the face-to-face, person-to-person relationships. On the other hand, some kids are welcoming that and kind of hiding behind the screens so that they don't have to connect. We have seen an increase in social media bullying, and that's a huge concern. As students are trying to manage increased depression and anxiety, now they're being attacked. And so many of them are just turning it off. They may still be keeping their screen on, but they're not really participating. They're not really interacting. And that's a concern, because if kids are not connecting, it becomes harder and harder to reach them. I will say I do some of my therapy sessions online. I do some of them in person. Most of my clients would prefer to come in person, and really want to make that happen. I think that's true for students in terms of wanting to participate with friends, wanting to participate in classes. There's just a different aspect to working with somebody online than there is seeing them face to face. We are now probably going to be doing more and more things online. I know a lot of colleges are going to hybrid kinds of classes. Some students can attend in person, some can attend online. There may be opportunities for private schools to do that as well. I do think it comes at a cost, though, for students really feeling connected and that their voices are heard. A lot of students, like I said, have anxiety about the future. Some of them probably not in private school settings, but some of them have had to kind of drop out of school or drop back on what they're doing so that they can earn money and help support the family. There's a lot of food insecurity that's going up for a lot of families. And when you're worried about having a safe place to live, a roof over your head, a place out of the cold during ice storms for Texas, and money to just pay the bills, you're not going to be focusing on those higher level goals and dreams and expectations. A lot of kids that are seniors or juniors in high school have been expressing concern about how are they going to be able to meet the requirements that colleges have for extracurricular activities, for applying for scholarships, for getting the recommendations that they need. There's a lot of anxiety about that. And is college even going to look the same? Are they going to be able to get in? If they do get in, are they going to be attending online? And many of them have pretty strong feelings about that, and they're not very positive feelings. They've been preparing their whole lives to be able to launch, and now they're going to be attending college from home. So a lot of anxiety. Largest increase is probably in older students who feel most impacted by this, but we're seeing it all the way down to 4- and 5-year-olds.
Okay, so we have another question here from our TAPS audience. What are some of the practices recommended to support mental and emotional well-being of the students, staff, and faculty? Can you talk about the benefits of breathing, meditation, and yoga?
Yes. This is where I'm going to teach you all some techniques if you'd like to do that. Remember, the first thing we talked about doing is being fully present. So we want to work on really bringing our mind back. Our mind is likely to race off many times in negative directions, but we can help ourselves and we can help our students by really being fully present in the moment. And we do want to kind of be aware of triggers, that things that might trigger us. For those of us who are older, the triggers can go all the way back to childhood. And so we think we're managing everything with our rational brain, which is our verbal, logical, time-oriented brains. And we are, but the other part of what's getting triggered is our emotional brain. And that's the part that doesn't really care about time. It is triggered, doesn't really care about words. You'll experience emotions, colors, feelings. This is the part of us that reacts to art and music and emotions and movement. And many times when we get triggered, yes, we're trying to process it with our emotional brain, and people will just say, I just felt frozen. Well, That's normal. That's the emotional part of our brain triggering, and fight or flight or freeze is usually our response. We don't have a chance to process that. We don't have a chance to say, wait, that isn't a good idea to freeze on the train tracks. I need to make another choice. We're going to go to what is familiar. We're going to go to what's comfortable and what we've always done. And so being more aware, noticing what activates us, noticing what triggers us is important. We can learn how to either contain some of those thoughts and feelings and events, or we can learn how to let them go. And we have to recognize that in a year like we've just come through, there's an additive effect. So things that happened to us in our past, if we've had trauma, and most of us have by the time we're adults, for sure, but many children have had trauma as well. Those are adding on to what's happening in the present, and then adding on to what our fears are about the future. So I'm going to teach you a few techniques that I teach my clients. Is that appropriate to go ahead and do that? Okay. So one thing I'd like to start with is helping you when you feel activated or triggered. We're going to learn how to contain those thoughts. So I'd like everybody to kind of imagine a container. You're each going to create your own container in your mind's eye. It's a container. It can be made out of anything: glass, metal, wood, whatever you like. The qualities of it are that it's impermeable and it's indestructible. And it has kind of a two-way valve system. So when you put a thought, a feeling, or an event into it, nothing else pops back out, right? Your thoughts and feelings and events are going to stay in this container, and they're going to rest comfortably in there until you're ready to process them, okay? You want to imagine the inside of the container to be a very comfortable place, okay? When I first did this exercise, I made it like an interrogation room because I like CSI things. And I will just tell you from personal and professional experience, your thoughts will not want to stay in an interrogation room. They do not want to stay there. They want to come right back out. So make it a very comfortable place, more like a lounge space, maybe, where your thoughts and feelings and events will want to hang out. Now, the important thing to remember here is you can put any thoughts or feelings or events into this container, and they're all going to go. When you invite them to go into the container, they're your thoughts. They're going to listen to you, and they're going to go. You can't put people in the container. No people. You can put thoughts about people, feelings about people, and events containing people in the container, but not the people themselves, okay? So we've got our container or box. You might want to give it a name. You can if you want to. I'm going to refer to it as the container or as the box, and that's how I refer to it with my clients. Now we're going to do some deep breathing, and some of you may have already done meditation or yoga, and you may be familiar with deep breathing, so this will just be a review. But I'm going to teach you possibly a couple things that most of my clients, even if they're practiced yoga practitioners, that they don't always think about doing. So you might want to put a hand up right underneath your neck, and then another hand down on your abdomen. And the reason we're doing this is to just become aware of our breathing. Most of us as humans, we breathe very rapidly, we breathe very shallowly, and we're breathing from up here. So our upper hand is the one that's going to be moving most of the time. What we want to do is to train ourselves to breathe from our diaphragm, from our lower abdomen. And so imagine your lower abdomen is a balloon. And as you breathe in, you inflate that balloon. And then you might hold it for a second or two. And then you let the air out, and the balloon deflates, and your hand moves back toward your spine. Okay? I often will encourage clients to add to this by imagining that they're breathing in light and hope and joy and positive feelings, and that when they breathe out, they're breathing out despair, darkness, hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness. And the important thing about this deep breathing is that we breathe out longer than we breathe in. So if you breathe in for a count of 3, you might want to exhale for a count of 7. I do have clients who say, how often do I need to do this? And I say, well, as often as you can. You can do this throughout the day. And if you can do at least 3 to 5 breaths at a time, you're going to find that you feel calmer, you feel more peaceful, you feel more focused, you feel more energized. And you can practice this breathing throughout the day. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, do your deep breathing to help you put things in the container, do your deep breathing, and then remind yourself that you need to rest, you need to sleep. Now, once you know how to do the deep breathing, you don't need to keep holding your hands there. You can do this deep breathing at your desk, in your classroom, in the car. There are some techniques I'm not going to advocate doing in the car, but deep breathing, it works anywhere you need it. All right, so we have our container, we have our deep breathing. Another way to manage our anxiety and help us to kind of process things non-verbally, we can do tapping. And there's lots of different ways to do that. If you're sitting at your desk, you can just tap your heels, or you can do walking in place, tap your toes. The important thing to do is one side and then the other. The research has shown that when we do what's called bilateral stimulation, we can actually kind of jumpstart our brains into processing things non-verbally. Of course, we're processing verbally if we're talking about them, but non-verbal is important because that's what addresses the fight or flight or freeze response. So tapping our toes, you can also take your fingers and tap right behind your knees if you're sitting at a Zoom meeting or another kind of meeting. You can tap like this, where you're kind of tapping one side and then the other. That feels good to a lot of people. We have a lot of touch hunger this year because we haven't been able to hug people or shake their hands or even see them in person. So that's something that really a lot of my clients say helps a lot. Again, one side and then the other. And you can choose the speed and the rate and intensity that you want to do. Your brain will pick up on it and you will notice a difference. Okay, one thing that this is really helpful, I think, for a lot of people, because it's very subtle. You can put your hands together like this and then just push the fingers of one hand against the back of the other hand. And if you go back and forth, one side and then the other, that will also help you to activate that part of your brain that needs to process anxiety, depression, frustration, anger, all those things, okay? All right, so we've done our container, we've done our deep breathing, we've done our tapping, and you can also teach your students to do this. I've taught children as young as 2 years old how to do some of these techniques. They can't do all of them, but they can do quite a few, and it helps them. It gives them ways that they can manage their emotions and help themselves to feel better. So the last thing we're going to put in here is imagine, again, in your mind's eye. This is a complete switch, so we're going to make a shift here. Imagine with your mind's eye a beautiful place. It can be a real place. It can be an imagined place. It can be a combination of real and imagined. If you notice the picture behind me, I love oceans and beaches, and that's one of my beautiful places. I have about 2 or 3 because when it's hot in Texas, I don't always want to go to the beach. Sometimes the mountains are a better place. Encourage yourself. See the beauty of this place. Hear the sounds. If there's waves, if there's water, if there's a waterfall, hear the music of the water. and really saturate yourself with those sights and sounds. Take a deep breath, smell the beautiful fragrance of this place. And then in your mind's eye, prepare a place for yourself to sit and to rest. And it could be a chair, a lounge, whatever works well for you. But this is your place. You have access to it, just like with your container. You have access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can go for just a few seconds if you want to, or you can go for a longer period of time if you need to. If you're having trouble sleeping, put thoughts in the container, do your deep breathing, do your tapping, and go to your beautiful place. This can be a way for you to kind of refresh yourself throughout the day and take good care of yourself. It becomes a form of self-care. And it's always accessible to you. It's your place. Oh, I forgot to tell you, you can invite someone else to join you there if you like, but remember, it's your place. So you can bring your dogs or your cats or your friends or family, but when you decide you want to be there by yourself, you just say goodbye and they're gone. There's no discussion, there's no argument. It's your place. You invite those you love to be with you, and when you're ready to be there by yourself, they leave. So that makes this place even better than going on vacation. Let's see. So we talked about need for better sleep. We can incorporate some of those kinds of things into getting ourselves better sleep. When you think about sleep, you want to think about it as one of the most important things you do every day. So you want to go to sleep at about the same time. You want to get up at about the same time every day, even on weekends. If you think about, oh, I like to sleep in on weekends, I get that. We all like that. But the longer you sleep in, the more you sleep in, the more you're going to be disrupting your body's natural rhythms. And it's almost like, when we have the spring forward and fall back every spring and fall, it messes us up. If we get to travel again and we have jet lag, it messes us up. So as much as we can, we want to be on a regular schedule, and we want to encourage that by kind of stopping our screen time about 30 or 40 minutes before we go to sleep. Consider taking a warm bath or shower after that, because it relaxes our tense muscles. And when we get out of a warm shower or bath, our temperature immediately drops. And that helps tell our body that it's time for sleep, just like going outside in the evening. The sun's down, it's dark, and it's cool. So you want to prepare your bedroom to be dark and relatively cool. If you need a fan, get one. If you have some ambient light in your bedroom, you may want to consider getting sleep curtains or using a sleep mask, using earplugs. All of those things can help you to have a deeper and better night's sleep. And it's going to help you to sleep better, and it's going to help you the next day to function better. Nutrition's been off for a lot of us during the pandemic. We want to try to eat some protein. We want to eat regularly and mindfully throughout the day, but listen to your body. Listen to what you need. Make sure you're staying hydrated, and make sure you're getting some protein. It can be animal protein or nut butter proteins, all kinds of different proteins out there, but our body needs protein to heal. We also need to make sure we're getting some regular exercise every day. Can be walking, can be gardening, can be housework. Just build in extra movement, because again, that helps reset your brain. It helps produce biochemicals that are going to help our body and brain to feel better. One thing we know makes a difference is expressing gratefulness or thankfulness every day. So I encourage my clients, even before you get out of bed in the morning, think about 3 things you're grateful for, that you're thankful for. And then again, before you go to sleep at night, think about 3 things. It can be simple things. I'm glad that my dog was happy to see me when I got home. I'm glad that we had sunshine today and no more ice. It can be very simple things, but we know that when we feel grateful and then when we express that gratitude and thankfulness to other people, it helps them, it helps us. It's a win-win. We all benefit from that.
So Dr. Richard, you have about 7 minutes left because I know you have to get on to your next appointment. If anyone, you're welcome to either put it in chat or unmute yourself if you have a question for Dr. Richard that you would like her to answer before we have her leave us. Now is the time. Now is you've got a clinical psychologist right here ready for you. So I would say go ahead and unmute and ask that question.
Hi, Dr. Richard. This is Dr. Scretchen from Chinquapin Preparatory School. And what we have found is that there's been sort of like a break in trust between the students and the faculty and the school because we had to do a quick switch to distance learning. And it was, you know, like everyone kind of shocked the system. And so how do we're really strong on relationships, but how do we kind of build in the idea of it's okay that things are changing and get the trust back?
Sure. Dr. Scretchen, that's a great question. We need trust for relationships to function, right? For us to be able to connect with other people and know that we're being heard, know that we're, being cared about. I would encourage you all to, again, work on being fully present with your students. One thing we didn't talk about specifically, but it looks like you're already good at this, and many of you may be, but just be really mindful and intentional when you're talking to students. We want to look them in the eye. We want to see them. They want them to see us and hear us. And if you're a little socially anxious, look right here. People can't tell if you're looking them in the eye or if you're looking kind of between their eyes, but they will feel heard. They will feel like you're fully present with them. And that does a lot to reestablish connection and trust. And we can say to them, we can validate, this has been a really tough year, but you've survived it and you've thrived. You've made it through this. You've got everything you need to be successful. And we are, if you can be specific, we are so proud of your kindness towards your fellow students or your helpfulness with helping the administration or helping our teachers. All of us need to hear those affirmations of what are we doing, even in the midst of difficult times? What are we doing right? And it's funny because a lot of us may have grown up in homes or in schools where we thought that pointing out what people did wrong and what was incorrect was the way to correct human behavior. We know now from the science, the research says, focus on the positives. Remind people what they're doing right. Thank them. When you see something small, you've got this. You're doing this. And it will improve your relationships. It will improve their feeling about themselves. It'll improve your feeling about yourself. It's amazing and very, very positive. Also this year, we found that psychology research again has found that tying up loose ends and consciously saying, that we're coming to the end of the social isolation and separation that we've had over this last year. but we've learned so much. And we're going to take what we've learned and make a better relationship in our schools, make better relationships in our families, and make a better world. That's what we're all about, right? Working with students. They're going to make the better world, and we're going to encourage them to do it. Hello, I think they're waiting for your question.
Who's waiting for my question?
I don't know. I just saw something pop up.
No, we're just chatting. So does anyone else have, she has about 2 minutes.
Uh-oh.
Dr. Richard, thank you again. We appreciate you. I know that this is, you've kind of fit us into your schedule, and we do appreciate, I know you rearranged. So thank you again. And hopefully the TAPS community, as we finish out our academic school year and get ready for summer and even next year, I know everyone's working really hard, that we kind of take some of this to help ourselves and of course help our community. So we really do appreciate it. Thank you again.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for asking me. It was an honor to be able to help. And I encourage all of you, you have what you need. Take good care of yourselves, take care of your families and your students. And it's just going to get better. We know that. That's what we're all here for, is helping people find the joy, find the hope, and remember that it starts with us.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.